What can we expect to see next week with some of your favorite stocks? Is it going to be a positive week, or are you going to lose all your money? Let's hope you're not going to lose your money, but in this video we're going to be covering stocks such as Palantir, Hims & Hers, Supermicro Computer, NVDA, AMD and SOFI. To start this video off, we're going to be looking at Hims & Hers. This stock has done exceptionally well in the last 5 days, with it being up a massive 42%, with the PE ratio currently being set at 137. Are we going to see this continue to climb next week? Well, looking at the last couple of days, we have obviously seen this massive rally and we are on a long position on the MACD indicator. However, we are seeming to look as if this indicator is going to cross paths soon. How soon? Well, it could be as soon as Tuesday if the market doesn't react quick enough. I have just done a recent video on Hims & Hers stock on intrinsic value, and within this year I have priced them in to be around the $34 to $66 range, which they are definitely currently at, and with the discounted free cash flow analysis coming in within the 9 years growth, projecting it to be around $315. So this stock seems to be fairly valued for where it currently is, but that is to say as if it was fairly valued for the rest of the year. I don't think there will be much more intrinsic growth within this stock. I think it might just be pure momentum which will carry the stock through, much like Palantir, as their intrinsic value for yearly growth is way below where it currently is. But looking at the PE ratio, investors are pricing in a lot of growth for future. But Hims & Hers does exceptionally well on their earnings reports, and with that being said, they have their earnings report set to come out on the 24th of February, so please do put that in your calendars if you do hold Hims & Hers. Looking on the moving averages, we are of course massively above all of the moving averages, with the 50-day moving average seeming to be catching up somewhat. However, I don't think it will actually cross. If it does, then we might see a lot of selling pressure next week, but personally I think we might see momentum carry through for this week. I don't think we're going to see a week like last week. I think that was an exception, but we might see us reach around the $64 to $68 mark. Failing that, we could also see some selling pressure as investors start to take profit. However, I do think that is less likely, and I do think that intrinsically they are where they need to be, so I don't think they're going to fall off like Symbotics did a couple of weeks ago. I think that they are pretty stable at this price point. So now we're looking at Palantir. Palantir has had a very strong week, with them being up 7.5%. It's still good growth, but it's nothing on Hims & Hers, of course. But they do have a PE ratio currently at 627, which is absolutely massive. Intrinsically, I have Palantir's growth for this year being set at $7 to $14. So obviously right now it is massively overvalued. And I do think this is a similar situation that Hims & Hers might follow in, with investors pricing in a lot of growth in the future. Of course, Palantir is an amazing company, and I have been bullish and bearish on this in the past. I feel as if it is somewhat overvalued, definitely at the moment, but people just seem to be pricing in a lot of growth as this stock continues to climb. And looking here on the 15-minute chart, we can see that we are above all of the trend lines now, which is a very positive indication. And when we look on the MACD indicator, we can see that we are actually in a long position now. It's not the most steep long position you've ever seen, but it is definitely a long position, and this could continue to carry on into Monday. Furthermore, looking on the RSI, it seems to be fairly bought at the moment on a 15-minute chart. If we change this to a day chart, we can see that we are currently massively overbought, so we could expect to see a bit of selling pressure in the start of next week. How early that will be into the week, I'm not sure. And will it even happen? Possibly not with Palantir, as it just continues to defy all odds. I've said this before, Palantir, and it just continues to climb. So if you're holding Palantir, all I can say is continue to hold. Furthermore, I do think Palantir does have a lot of natural growth still yet to come. However, I think it is definitely coming way too early. I think investors are keen to get in this as soon as possible, but personally, it's definitely not at a price in which is sustainable at the moment. It should, in theory, come down. Will it actually? Most likely not. So that is going to conclude Palantir. We are now going to move on to NVIDIA. So right now, looking at NVIDIA on a day chart, we can see that we have had a lot of volatility in the last couple of weeks. mostly being due to things coming out such as DeepSeek, and we do have the earnings report set to come out on the 26th of February. And we can see here on the right that NVIDIA has obviously beat earnings estimates consistently for the last 4 quarters. We can see that on the MACD indicator, we are most definitely in a short position at the moment, but this does look to be returning to a long position now, and I am still very bullish on NVIDIA. With NVIDIA being up 6.94% in the last 5 days, I think that we are seeing a lot of growth being priced into NVIDIA again, as the market is starting to see that this DeepSeek thing, which I said from the start, is nothing to worry about. I said this from the start. I said DeepSeek is basically just a hoax, but the hype around it really crashed the American tech stocks, which I don't think was justified at all. And another really positive indication is that now NVIDIA is above the 50-day moving average, which is just going to push its growth further in the next week. And looking on the 15-minute chart, we can see it is a very similar story for the moving averages, looking very good, and we are actually in a long position on the MACD indicator. So I think next week is going to be a very positive week for NVIDIA. I'm looking forward to seeing some potential gains. I don't see anything on here which is telling me it should go down, but of course there will always be the risk of bad press coming out for NVIDIA, which will not help the stock, and there is of course their looming earnings report. I currently have an intrinsic value for NVIDIA for this year's growth to be between $129 and $246 per share, and we are well in this at the moment, and I personally think there's much more room for growth when you account for the mean of these two figures. So I think intrinsically NVIDIA should have another good year, let alone a good week next week. We're now taking a look at AMD. AMD is a stock in which I've been very bearish on in the past few weeks. I've made a video saying that I think that if you're buying this, you're catching a falling knife and you'll lose your fingers and your money. It is known as advanced money destroyer, as people priced in way too much growth when NVIDIA was doing so well, but AMD just couldn't keep up. I have the intrinsic value set at $63 to $121 for this year's growth, so it's looking to be as if currently we are in a fair valuation. There might even be a bit of room for growth intrinsically this year, but if we go to a day chart, we can see just what devastation we have seen in this stock. I feel a bit bad for anybody that is actually in this stock. As around about here, I even said again, I don't think you should be buying this stock. People disagreed, but the stock price has just continued to decline. We have the looming earnings report set to come out on Tuesday, the 6th of May, so that is quite a way away, as obviously we have already had the Q4 report, in which the earnings report wasn't actually that bad. It looked to be quite positive, but the stock price still continued to decline. We are obviously in a short position on the daily chart, and we are well below all of the moving averages. Furthermore, on a day chart, we can see that we are actually now above all of the moving averages, which could suggest that we might open up into a long position next week on the MACD indicator. As you can see here, that we are just barely in a short at the moment, and it is looking to be entered into a long shortly. I currently have AMD rated at a hold down here, with the discounted free cash flow 9-year analysis being set at $294 per share, and I think that that is fair. I think AMD is a brilliant company. I'm not a complete bear on it, but I think it's just massively overvalued for where they currently are, and I know a lot of people don't actually think that. It is quite a speculative stock, but that is just my opinion when you compare it to their peers. So now we're looking at SOFI. I think personally SOFI has been beaten down quite badly in the last couple of weeks. I don't think it's fair to have this massive selling pressure, and when we look on the 15-minute chart here, we can see we are well into a long position at the moment, and we have just exited out of an overbought territory, which is looking to be very, very bullish for SOFI. We can see that last week was actually quite a good week for SOFI, with them being up 8.72%, but when we look on a monthly chart, we can see that from the peak around the 23rd of January, we have fallen from $17 to the low of around $14, which I don't think was justified. I have a current intrinsic value per share of SOFI to be set between $13 and $25. So currently it looks as if we are relatively fairly valued, but personally I think we should be looking towards the high end of that. As if we look here on the right, just below my webcam when I can move it, we can see that we are smashing out earnings report. I keep saying we like I work for them. I don't work for them, but SOFI is smashing out estimates with their earnings reports. So I think it's fair to say this stock deserves a higher price at the moment. I think it's been very badly beaten down. When we look on a day chart, we can see a similar story, of course, with it being beaten down from its peak here in January. And I think that we are now seeing some sort of pattern of we can expect to see a bit of momentum behind this stock. I really do hope so. But of course, it could go either way with this stock, as we are reaching like a third head here. Will it continue to climb next week? I do actually think it will. We are actually in a short position, but this could be reversed relatively early within the week. And we are now above the 50-day moving average, which is another really good, strong indicator for SOFI. So finally, we're looking at Supermicro Computer Incorporated, which I almost forgot to do. I was just editing the video and realized I left it out. But looking on the daily chart, we can see that we are above all of the moving averages apart from the 200-day moving average. And on the RSI, we are looking to enter into somewhat of an overbought territory. If we look on a 15-minute chart, what can we see? Well, when it loads, I think we're going to see some more positive things for this stock. Okay, here we go. We are now on the 15-minute chart, and we can see that we are actually entering into somewhat overbought territories right now, but we are above all of the moving averages, which is incredibly bullish. If we look on an MACD indicator, we can see we are well into a long position at the moment. So next week could go either way in my mind. I think we might see a bit of selling pressure as people are starting to take profits, as historically this stock hasn't been the most, secure investment, I would say. It has been known to fabricate its earnings reports in the past, so it's something that investors are really reluctant to invest in. However, we can see that we have had a really good week last week. With this in the last week being up a massive 32%, will it continue to rise? Well, there is high potential with the PE ratio only being set at 23 at the moment, and the earnings per share being at $2 at $47. So realistically, it should continue to rise as investors will see good returns. However, I do think we might see a lot of profit taking within the next week, especially early on. It might end up being a good week for Supermicro, but early on we could see a bit of selling pressure, especially as we are now entering into overbought territories on the RSI. So that is going to conclude this video. If you want to see my current buy, hold, sell positions, it's here on the left with the exception of SOFI. I need to add that one on. For some reason it's not on there, which I thought it was. But I'm not a financial advisor, so you shouldn't be taking anything I say with financial advice. It's just for your own information. You should always do your own research before buying into a stock, as when you invest, your capital will always be at risk. I hope you have enjoyed this video and found it somewhat useful. If you have, please do hit that like and subscribe button. It would be greatly appreciated. With that being said, I will see you for the next video.